Alright, so I've started work on the air intake. I took an original Miata air intake, cut it down, was a little close to my cut, so I went ahead and added some more weld to bring it up a little bit higher away from my fuel injector ports. What I went and also did too is take some time to mess with some steel because it was cheaper than aluminum, and found out that an 1 5/8 OD or 1 1/4 ID Schedule 40 will fit on there just perfect. So went ahead and cut my runners. I'm doing a 4-inch runner length. I figure that's a fair torque to horsepower range. Then I went ahead and ovaled my vise jaws, only clamp in 3/4 of an inch, so I made sure to mark it so I wouldn't put any more past what the jaws were able to flattening. Then I made sure that it fits. Look at that. Right there, beautiful. I need to deburr all the edges as well. Don't forget to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and have these slightly up at an angle, just a little bit. So I need to add a little bit more metal on this backside here. But the idea also is to, when I put this plate on here, twist it just a little bit so that way we can have the air box articulate in the right orientation. Center of each one of these is 3.5 inches from center to center. I gave myself a 1/2 inch back spacing over here, and I gave myself 3/4 of an inch, 7/8 we'll call it, of an inch from here to the edge, so that way my air intake throttle body is far enough away from the rest of these that it just doesn't automatically suck into cylinder 1 immediately. So we'll go ahead and show you the process as I'm going along. I also forgot to mention I have a jig made to hold this in place, and these are your fuel rail weld-on nuts. So now I need to make a bracket that's going to hold them in the right location so the fuel rail will actually mount to this location. So once I have all my tubes put on here, then I can figure out where exactly that mount's gonna have to come off of, probably mount. So I went ahead and I've marked my 3/4. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in my vise and squeeze it. I wanna make sure that it's nice and straight. And I'm gonna go ahead and just reef it down until I reach my desired measurement. And I have a little other tube that I reference it against. That way, make sure to get it right. And you just sit here and you really gotta get it down. And then don't forget the spring back. Every time you squeeze something together, it wants to go back to its original form to a certain amount. Spring back. You gotta be prepared for that. Okay. Grab my template. Take this off. You can watch it expand sometimes. I'm gonna make sure that it's fit perfectly the same. So you continue to do that with the rest of them until you have them all oval. Each air intake, I will say, is different. Your outside diameter to oval diameter will be different for every single pipe, so you may have to play. I had to buy 2 different sizes of pipe and found out they both didn't work, and this was my last final option. So play around a little bit, see what works and what doesn't. Alright, so I went ahead and marked out where my throttle body plate needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and cut out this hole with a plasma torch. So I went ahead and rough cut the shape, and we'll come back in with a die grinder and get our nice final cleaner cut. The plasma is just a rough cut to get it all cut out to the shape we need. So I'm doing some calculations. This is not going to work. I need a little bit extra so I can bend up a tang here and bend up the back half of the air intake so there's less to weld. So I'm going to go ahead and remake this whole piece and just go ahead and cut this out. Alrighty, so I've got to go ahead and level this a little bit before I go weld the intake runners on. And what I'm using is a slab of granite and a piece of sandpaper, and I'm just holding it down with one hand and sliding it across. So we'll file that all down till it's nice and smooth, and you can already see that Some of the places are getting flat. I just need them a little bit flatter so that way the pipe will actually fit to it really well. So what I've got here is I bent up the frame and I've tacked on my throttle body plate. And since the throttle body weighs so much, I need to add some gussets in here to support that weight so that way it doesn't twist over. And also this portion here is going to be a flat sheet that'll be bent over and across, coming back across here. So we'll get those little gussets cut out and tacked in there. So I got the gusset supports welded. Now I got to make the runners, and I need to put a slight cut on those and weld them in on the back side here. So I'm going to go ahead and make some cuts on those real quick. So now that I've cut the degree on there, I have welded up the intake manifold box. Kind of see there's a slight taper rising up, and then both sides are both flat and leveled. So I'm going to take this back to the car, test fit, make sure everything works well, and then we'll continue on. So it looks like it's coming out well. I got enough clearance for my AN lines, the reservoir for the radiator, the coolant line runs right past it, and it looks like it fits in well inside the engine bay. And I'll be easily able to get my hand in and around underneath here to get that oil filter. That's always been hard to get to. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. I'll continue with getting some cardboard pieces made and wrap that around and make that into some aluminum. Finish welding it out and call it a day. So now that I got my intake runners welded on the inside, I'm going to go ahead and weld them on the back side as well and weld my seams together. So I'll have a bead here and bead here. Then the only thing left to do is my fuel injector rail and capping off the last of this, and then this air intake will be done. Alrighty, so now that I got the intake runners welded up, go ahead and start tacking on my box here. Just a bent piece of aluminum. And I'm going to go ahead and tack it up, weld it on the seam lines here, and just kind of go along, tack, press down, tack and press down, and we'll get it all tacked up. Alright, air intake is welded up, all good. Went ahead and added a major glob of some weld. I'm going to grind that flat. I'm going to tap and drill that for my vacuum fittings, and I got to put one AN fitting, and I think it's going to go somewhere up here between the two intake runners. So other than that, I'll weld that on and you'll see the next spot. Alright, so I went and bought some 20 mil aluminum rod. Went ahead and drilled out my holes for the bolt and fuel rail spacer. Just go ahead and slide that in there and tack it in place. That'll hold my fuel injector rail. Went ahead and add all my AN fittings to everything, so that way I can go ahead and put in my coolant line from the block and my oil catch can. So we'll go ahead and weld that up. So I went ahead and welded up the fuel rail holder rods, and I've also went ahead and welded up the throttle cable assembly holder. Other than that, this air intake is now done, and I had to add a little bit of a spacer plate to get this thing to come out so that way my throttle body and sensors don't hit the back of some areas. I was thinking about grinding them out, but I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go ahead and polish this nice and shiny and go ahead and get it in the car. Yep.